Chapter 1: Shadows of the Past. A new day. The city was waking up. The sun was slowly breaking through the clouds, leaving long shadows on the asphalt. People were starting to leave their homes, hurrying to work, looking for their way in this world. But for Alexei, this morning was special. He felt something unusual, something that could change his life forever. He woke up in his small apartment on the outskirts of the city, staring at the ceiling with exhausted eyes. Outside the window, the street noise was noisy, but he was focused on the thoughts spinning in his head, about the old house that had long stood empty near the city, and about strange messages on social networks. Something is wrong here, he thought. Maybe it's worth going and seeing for yourself? Maybe there's more hidden there than it seems? With breakfast and a cup of coffee, he opened his laptop and came across a new post on the social network. It was a short but very mysterious message. If you are wondering what this ruined house hides, just don't come closer. There lives something that is better left in the past. This place is not for human eyes. Alexei felt a chill run through him. His heart beat faster. It was not just a joke or a horror story. He felt something really important in these words, something that could hide the truth. A journey into the unknown. He spent the next few hours researching this topic. He found several old photos that were taken of the house many years ago, when it was still a completely perfect house with a well-groomed garden and large windows. Back then, it was the place of a wealthy family. But over time, something happened, and it remained empty. Alexei remembered the legends that were circulating about this house. They said that strange things happened there, that no one visited it at night, and that people disappeared there, especially those who tried to uncover its secrets. After work, he decided to go and see for himself. Why not? After all, he had long felt that these stories were not just fiction. There was something hidden there, and he had to find out. The shadow of the night. After sunset, he took a lantern and set off on his way. The darkness quickly descended, and the road leading to the old house became even more eerie. The wind played with the branches of the trees, creating strange whispers. The street was empty, and only his footsteps broke this deaf silence. A few minutes later, he was standing in front of the ruin. It was a large, ruined mansion with tall wooden pillars and a torn roof and windows. The entrance was broken. The door was wide open. He took a few steps and entered the darkness. It was almost dark inside. Only the weak light of the lantern illuminated the debris, old furniture, and strange signs on the walls. It seemed that the house lived a life of its own, creaks echoing from under the floor and shadows swaying on the walls. Alexei began to explore the spaces. In the large hall, he saw a strange object, an old amulet in the form of a circle with runes. It was made of metal, and it seemed to have strange power. "What is this?" he whispered, touching the amulet. Suddenly he heard a whisper, quiet but very persistent. It seemed that someone or something was looking at him from the darkness. His heart beat faster. Shadow in the dark. He looked around and saw a shadow. It moved among the rubble, as if trying to hide. Alexei felt a chill run down his spine. Something was wrong here. This wasn't just a ruin. This was a place that held a secret. "Who are you?" he asked quietly. A voice seemed to come from the darkness, a whisper, barely audible, but sounding as if it came from the very depths. "Not here for you," the voice croaked. What was it? Fear and curiosity competed with each other. Alexei stood there, not knowing what to do next. Internal conflict. Deep inside, he felt he needed to investigate. This was his chance to find out the truth. But fear was stronger. What if this shadow wasn't just an image, but something more real? What if he had broken something forbidden? He looked at the amulet again and decided to take it with him. Perhaps it would be the key to the solution. Deepening the mystery. After returning home, he began to search for information about the amulet. He found several old entries in books that spoke of similar objects. It turned out that this amulet is a symbol of ancient rituals that can open gates to other worlds or summon spirits. One thing shocked him. This amulet was found in the same house many years ago. This meant that something very important was hidden here, something that could change his perception of the world. Shadow and fate. In the following days, he began to feel that something was following him. The shadows became more and more real. He saw them in his dreams, heard whispers in the darkness. He began to research the history of the house. He learned that people who were engaged in occult practices once lived here. Every day, he felt that his mind was beginning to dim, and his inner voice persistently whispered, it was necessary to finish the investigation and leave this case. Climax. On the last night, he returned to the house to find answers. There, an even more terrifying shadow awaited him. It emerged from the darkness and began to move toward him. Alexei realized that he had disturbed something very old and very dark. From now on, he was trapped. Either he would be able to stop this force, or he would become its victim. Chapter 2. The Dark Side of the Past. Introduction. Shadows that don't let you sleep. The next day was difficult for Alexei. Memories of the night's events and the mysterious shadow haunted him. He woke up in his room, covered in a cold sweat, and with his first breath, he remembered everything that had happened. His heart was still beating fast, and thoughts were swirling in his head. What had he done wrong? Would he be able to survive if this continued? He spent the whole day in a state of tense anticipation. Nothing could distract him, neither work nor books. Images of the shadow, whispers, and strange signs swirled in his head. His inner voice told him to act, but he wasn't sure if it was the right path. His inner anxiety grew, like a terrible monster tearing him apart from the inside. When evening came, he decided to return to the house. Perhaps there were new clues there, or he could find answers to his questions. Apart from the amulet he had taken from himself last time, he felt that he needed something more, something extra, to help him understand what was happening. Return to the ruins. Alexei found himself again near the old house. This was his second trip here, and he was beginning to feel that this place had become a part of his life. Forgotten and scary, it had become his personal battlefield with the darkness. This time, he was more careful. The entrance was already open, and he quietly made his way inside. The whole house was filled with strange sounds, creaks, rustles, and even a quiet hum that seemed almost human. He felt that something was wrong here, and that his every step could cause a new evil event. Walking around the rooms, he again came across a strange manuscript stored in an old cupboard. It was a diary, notes made probably a long time ago. Here is what he found. We found it. Whoever owns the amulet has the power to open the gates, but it also comes with a price. Shadows come from the past and they never forget. They are looking for the one who disturbed their peace. I know that this must be fought, otherwise the darkness will swallow everything. These words stuck in Alexei's head. He understood that this diary was the key to the solution. He began to study its pages, looking for any clues or a way to stop the darkness. Discovering the terrible truth. During his research, he came across an old photograph. It showed a man in a hat with a face that resembled himself. On the back, it was written, "A Player in the Dark, 1924. This was the first hint that this story comes from the distant past. What surprised him even more was the date, 1924. This meant that this mystery had existed for almost a century. And what's even more amazing is that this man was one of the first to investigate this house and this force. What to do next? He asked himself a question and decided that he needed to learn more about this person. Perhaps there was something in the city archives that would help him solve this mystery. Encounter with the past. The next day, he turned to the local archives. There, he found old newspapers and documents related to this man. His name was Dr. Mykola Kravchenko. It turned out that he was a scientist and researcher of the occult, who back in the 1920s was engaged in the study of dark forces and rituals. Even more interestingly, in the archives, there was a photograph of the same man, taken in 1924, and next to him, an old house. It was the same mansion. Almost with horror, Alexei realized that this man might have been involved in what was happening now. Maybe he was the one who created this force and left it as a legacy. And now she's back. Meeting a mysterious old man. In his search for more answers, he came across another interesting character, an old man who lived nearby. He was a former student of Dr. Kravchenko, who lived in a dilapidated hut not far from the ruins. "Are you looking for answers?" the old man asked as Alexei approached him. "You must know that this house is not just a ruin. It is a gate, and it is open, and anyone who tries to close it pays the price." "Who are you?" Alexei asked. "My name is Semyon. I was Kravchenko's student, and I know what you are looking for. You dared to enter this darkness, and now you must know. This force gives no peace to anyone. It lives in the shadows, and it longs to return." "What should I do?" Alexei asked anxiously. "You must understand, this force is not just darkness. It is something that lives in the past, and if you want to stop it, you need to find its source. But be careful, this shadow has long arms." A new plan and new dangers. Alexei felt that his mission had become more complicated. He realized that he had to find Dr. Kravchenko to learn more about this force and how to stop it. But he also knew that this path would be dangerous. He returned home to consider his next steps. A new challenge awaited him, to uncover the secret of the past and save himself from the darkness. Chapter 3: Echoes of the Past. Introduction: The Returning Shadows. After meeting Seaman, Dr. Kravchenko's former student, Alexei felt that his path in this battle with the darkness had become even more complicated. The past, which he had previously considered just legends and myths, had now become part of his reality. And with each step he understood, this story had its price. His dreams were filled with images of old ruins, shadows, and voices from the past. He woke up with the feeling that someone was watching him. Semyon's words echoed in his head again. "If you decide, you will have to fight this to the end. Otherwise, the darkness will swallow everything." He spent the whole day preparing for a new search. He needed to find more detailed information about Dr. Kravchenko and his research, as well as how to stop the force that had returned from the past. Gathering information? First of all, Alexei decided to visit the local library and archives. There, he began to look for any mention of Dr. Kravchenko, his research, and any documents that could help him understand what was happening. After several hours of searching, he came across a section of old manuscripts, newspapers, and diaries. Finally, he found something important: a manuscript signed by Dr. Kravchenko himself, dated several years before his disappearance. Here's what he found. "My research has led me to the discovery that darkness is not simply the absence of light. It is a living being that can enter our world through an old gate. The gate I created and opened to explore this power can now be our undoing if left unsealed. I believe the key to stopping it lies in an old amulet I created and in the rituals that can close this gate. But the price of this is the price of my soul." These words frightened him greatly, but they also gave him hope. He realized that the amulet he had found in the ruins might be the same key. Now he was going to find out exactly how to close the gate and stop the power. New discoveries. The next step he decided to take was to visit the place where, according to his assumption, Dr. Kravchenko's first experiment was conducted, an old laboratory complex, which was located not far from the ruins. It was a ruined house with abandoned laboratories where, according to rumors, research into the occult and dark magic was conducted. During his research, he came across another old diary, notes made during experiments. They described rituals, invocations, and processes for opening the gate. Here is one of the entries. "The ritual of closing the gate is not just a spell. It is an act that requires great strength and concentration. The amulet should be placed in the center of the ritual, around it, the symbols and words of the spell. But most importantly, it is necessary to gather energy that can return the gate to its closed state. Alexei felt that his knowledge of rituals and symbols was growing. He began to collect all available notes and drawings to construct them in his head and prepare for possible application. Acquaintance with the past. At this time, he also learned about another person who participated in Kravchenko's research. It was Professor Victoria Larina, who worked at the same institute and disappeared several years ago. She was one of those who studied rituals and symbols. Alexei decided to find her traces. It turned out that she lived in an old house not far from the city. There he found her old diaries and letters. They contained many clues and warnings. Here is one of the entries. You can't open the gates without understanding their essence. These are not toys. The shadow that seeps through them can destroy all living things. I stopped when I realized the price that was paid for these studies. And you, who are reading this, be careful. This was another bell. The gates and their closing are not so simple, and any violation can lead to disaster. Action plan and new dangers. Alexei realized that he needed to act quickly. He decided that the first thing he needed to do was find a way to close the gate once and for all. To do this, he had to gather all the necessary artifacts and prepare a ritual. He began to make a plan, prepare the amulet, draw the symbols, search for the appropriate words of the spell. At the same time, he was very careful, realizing that the shadow and the returned power could penetrate at any moment and destroy him. A few days later, he set to work. A clear scenario had already formed in his head. He would place the amulet in the center of the ruins, outline the symbols, and perform a spell. But he knew that it was very risky, and that each of his actions could be his last. Chapter 4. Introduction. The Moment of Truth. Alexei stood around the ruins, which he had studied for a long time, and was preparing for the final battle with the forces of darkness. His hands were shaking, and his heart was beating faster than ever. He knew that everything was now decided. The enemy, long hidden in the shadows of the past, was ready to return and devour all life. He carefully placed the amulet in the center of the ruins. Around it, he drew symbols that he had learned from the diaries and notes he had found. His main goal was to close the gate that had opened from the past and stop the force that threatened to destroy everything. At that moment, shadows began to appear from the darkness. Moving and bizarre, they silently watched him. Alexei realized his time had come. He began to repeat the spell, which he composed from the words he found, and held the amulet in his hands. The beginning of the ritual, the struggle with time. The sound of the words of the spell filled the air with magical energy. At that moment, the shadows began to move faster, approaching the amulet. They looked like shapeless balls of darkness, whining and hiding in the depths of the past. Alexei felt that his energy was running out, but he did not give up. His voice became stronger, and he imagined that each word was a blow to the darkness, which needed to be destroyed. As he spoke, he remembered the words of Semyon and Victoria, their warnings and instructions. Suddenly, a large shadow emerged from the darkness, the very entity from the past that owned this place. It looked like a colossal monster with many eyes and limbs that emitted a terrible light. "Do you dare to challenge my power?" A voice filled the air. "You are only a wanderer in my webs, and I will eat you." But Alexei was not afraid. Gathering all his strength, he shouted, "This is my land. This is my fight. You will no longer have power. I will close the gates and stop you." Climax. The battle for the future. He began to pronounce the most powerful spell he had found in the old records. His voice echoed through the ruins, and each word was a blow to the darkness. The amulet glowed brightly, and symbols began to appear around it, glowing and flickering. The shadow began to scream, its movements becoming more frantic. She tried to break through the spell, but Alexei held on and did not let her destroy everything. His body was filled with the strength that he received from the amulet and his internal resources. Suddenly, a bright light burst out of the darkness. It was the amulet itself, which became the source of energy for closing the gate. It began to emit a powerful surge, and with each second, the darkness receded. "This is my last battle," Alexei shouted, and he imagined that his will was the key to victory. The end and a new beginning, restoring the world. With his last efforts, he finished the spell. The light of the amulet enveloped everything around, and with a loud rumble, the gate closed. The shadows that were around began to disappear, disappearing into the abyss of the past. The darkness receded. Dawn appeared on the site of the ruins. The sun rose above the horizon, illuminating the ruined walls and shattered symbols. All this time, Alexei stood, breathing heavily, but with a smile on his face. He did it. The sound of his voice rang out in the silence. We have won. The shadow will not return again. Epilogue: A new beginning. After the ritual was completed, Alexei felt exhausted, but filled with inner peace. He knew that his mission was over and that the world had become safe again. He returned to his home, where new challenges and new beginnings awaited him. But now he was stronger and wiser. He realized that darkness is not only an external enemy, but also a part of human nature, which must always be restrained and understood. A star appeared on the horizon, a symbol of hope and new life. The end of the story.